A lesson isn't learned just because, a lesson isn't done just because you learned something. A lesson is done once you learn to defeat what it is that made you knock out or tap out. I imagine a UFC fight, and it's 1 against 1, and guy number one, if he loses and he learns, okay, this time, that time, I need to do this next time I fight someone like that. Well, but what about when you fight him again? Him being the negative thought that you can't stop thinking, him being the rumination that keeps playing on replay that you can't get out of your head unless you drink it or smoke it away, him being whatever it is that you can't get away from, and you do everything that you can to push it down and make it go away, but it just keeps showing up. You can say, I learned this and that, but that's not the ending of the lesson. That's not when it closes the loop. It closes the loop when you go back into the arena after you learn. Then you do the off-court training like you would at a UFC match. You would do off-court training to get stronger and more powerful and to practice the techniques needed to defeat him again. And so you go back into the arena and you bring the techniques that you learned off the court and you win. Now you learned how to tame him. Now you learned how to not shut him down, but say, I know how to control you. And if you try to come at me, this is what's going to happen. The mind becomes your servant rather than you becoming enslaved to the mind. The arena within. There comes a moment in every life where understanding is not enough. You can memorize the lesson, you can name the pattern, you can talk about the wound with perfect clarity, but when you return to the place where you once fell, the lesson is not complete. A lesson doesn't end when you learn something. A lesson ends when you can walk back into the arena where you once got knocked out and remain standing. Picture the mind like a UFC opponent, relentless, familiar, intimate, not a stranger you fear, but a version of you that knows exactly where your ribs are the weakest. They know your soft spots, your blind spots. The fight is never against the world. The fight is against the thought you can't outrun, the memory you can't stop replaying, the rumination that loops like a cursed course inside your head. You can say, I learned my lesson, but learning is just the film study. The slow motion replay, the knowing of where the punch came from, but not knowing yet how to block it. And so you do film study, and you go slow motion, and you work on your speed and your technique and your formation. And you do the work off court or off the mat. The real work happens off the court in the training ground of awareness. Breath work as footwork, self-honesty as conditioning, presence as your guard up, chin tucked. You practice the techniques of return, the pause, the reframe, the letting go, the choosing again. Then comes the rematch. The mind rises like an old rival, throwing the same moves it always has. And this time, you don't fold. You don't tap. You don't get knocked out. You don't lose yourself in the storm. You apply what you learned when nothing was on the line. This is where the loop closes. Not when you understand your patterns, but when you can face them and remain unbroken. Mastery is not the absence of the opponent. Mastery is knowing how to meet him without fear. The mind becomes your servant only after you prove you're no longer its prey. That is the arena. That is the work. That is the lesson completed.